It's the Onstage Podcast with Chris Robert. Welcome to the Onstage Podcast. Here we have a award-winning Canadian-American DGC Director, and he's got 18 years experience in the film industry and some of the various technical onsets, post-production capacities. In addition to directing and producing, is over 250 episodes of television, including my favorite, Supergirl, The Flash, and we have him here. Kyle Lawrence. Hello there, my friend.
Hello, thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. Thank you very much. Can you please give us a little bit of backstory of who you are?
Yeah, so I am a director and producer, live in Vancouver. I've directed a handful of various projects, short films, a couple of feature films, a couple of web series, and I've also worked on, in a number of other technical capacities on a bunch of TV shows and other features as well. So lots of film experience for sure.
Yeah, I really, when I saw that you did Supergirl and The Flash, and so I really appreciate that. How did you become a director, and why was that the direction that you wanted to go?
I guess the how I became a director is I actually started out writing and producing a TV series when I was 16 years old, and just kind of my own thing. Started going forward with this project. We had ended up producing and writing 26 episodes of this series. It made it onto a few networks around the world, and then from there, I had an opportunity to. I really wanted to get into directing. I had an opportunity to get into directing. I had someone had offered an opportunity for me to direct a small independent feature that he had written and was producing, and so I went for it and tried that, and I really enjoyed the process. Really enjoyed directing, and I guess the reason why I went that route is I really enjoy just the storytelling involved in everything that directing is. It's all about telling the story and using the shots and the actors, and how things come about to I guess get the vision across for that story in the most meaningful way.
Like when you add music to a film, like for instance, the Jaws scene, do 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 do
Right.
do do do. How did they know that would be right music to put in there?
Well, I think the thing with music is it's all about using the music to tell the story even better. And so I know for myself as a director, when I am trying to convey a certain emotion or trying to tell a certain story, it is the music is one of the pieces that I look at to try to say how can we make this in a way that's going to tell the story I want it to tell. And so it's more about like with most of my projects, I usually bring in a composer or bring in someone to create the music, create a fresh score for us. And so when I'm working with that composer, I'm typically saying, here's the emotion I'm trying to convey here. Here's what's going on kind of behind the scenes that you may not know about in the story, and how can we convey this through the music. And so I think obviously certain types of sounds and music are going to convey different types of emotions, and it's more about how can we just almost trial and error sometimes. How can we find the best sound for this emotion we want to get across?
Yes, and it's very emotional, especially with scenes from obviously The Flash, Supergirl. Also, I wanted to ask, when we were talking about music, do you have someone test out the music? Like, do you have like the 4 scenes and 4 different music, and you have like, okay, who likes this one, who likes this one, or is it this is the music that it goes to, this is the scene, this is the music, it's done, deal? Is that how it works?
I can tell you how I do it, and I can't speak for how they do it on The Flash or Supergirl, because on those shows I wasn't involved in the music aspects and all that. But in my projects, or anything that I've directed or anything that I have been involved in the music, I think that's a great idea. trying to have the different pieces and different styles and doing test audiences, but you don't often have that much time and you don't often have the luxury of paying the composer to compose four different tracks for the same piece. And so what I typically do is I'll work with a composer, and I kind of have a good sense, I think, of where I want it to go and what I want it to sound like. And oftentimes the composer brings something totally fresh and new to the table, and I can hear it and say, "Oh, that's better than I was imagining," or say, "Oh, that's not quite there." And then I try to usually fine tune it as much as I can with a composer, maybe with one or two other people involved, or any of the stakeholders if they're depending on what type of project it is. But then once we kind of get it to a certain point, then I do like to get it in front of a few trusted individuals that are somewhat removed from the project. They don't have any emotional ties either way to one sound or another, and allow them the opportunity to give me kind of their external view, feedback on what they think is going to, what strikes a chord best with them, I guess. And so it is nice to have that feedback. I don't usually go as far as having four different samples and four different options, just because of the time and budget limitations. But I definitely, do as much as I can to, get it to a point where I think it's going to be the best, and then share that with a few trusted individuals that aren't connected to the project, let them put their feedback in, and then make changes from there.
What do you think is more of a lagging process, to add the music to the film or coming up with the music? What do you think takes the longest?
I think, what would you define as like adding the music to the film? Because in my mind, that's kind of one of the same process.
I was watching your No Internet twice, actually. I enjoyed it.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah, excellent. I would have given you an award as well. There's some scenes in there that music was perfect. Just say, how long did it take you to add the first bit of music to the first scene in that movie?
Right. So yeah, that was actually that was a really interesting project to work on for the music, because we had a composer who created the majority of the music for the film. However, the first scene was actually the young actor that played the part of Mateo, composed the music for the first scene. And so I wanted to give him this opportunity to create some music as well for the film, because he's very musically gifted, very interested in music. So it was interesting having the two different spectrums of this process, because our composer who did the majority of the music actually lives in the UK. And so all of our work was just remote, and sending files back and forth and listening to it. Whereas the first scene that we did, so the opening credits into that warehouse scene, that was, myself and this young actor working together in a little, makeshift studio, and creating this music. And a lot of that was, him creating the music, but me sitting there with him and kind of guiding him for, how about try this? How about try that? And I have, I am a little bit more, musically gifted than a lot of directors are. So, I kind of have the ability to guide him in that way. And it was, definitely a really interesting process. I would say that for that first scene, we kind of sat down once, kind of talked through some ideas. He played a few things on the piano for me, and we just kind of thought about what might work. We spent maybe an hour or two doing that, and then I left him with the clip of that first scene so that he could kind of, practice a few things and play around a bit on his own. And then we came back together maybe a week or so later and spent, maybe 4 or 5 hours together, actually laying down the tracks for that first scene, recording it, and then we had it done at the end of that 5-hour session. And then a little bit of tweaking as well, and then our audio, post audio people did some tweaking too. But for the most part, it was quick and done. And yeah, that was basically the process for that first scene.
That's amazing. He's going to remember that.
Mm-hmm.
That's something he'll put on his resume. So listen, I added music to a scene in a movie. Check this out. You're very good with the way you direct and the way you produce, and
Thank you.
yeah. But do you think, I know there's a lot of work in going into producing a season, like for instance, season of The Flash and the season
Mhm.
of Supergirl, DC's Legend of Tomorrow,
Yep.
and any other show. Like I'm pretty sure that Law and Order SVU has its own amount of time. But um, what do you think of Foley artists? Is that something that you have had your hand in as well?
I have, yes. So, I've never done that myself, but in the projects I've directed, I've brought on board various, Foley artists or sound designers, and hired these individuals to create the Foley and all the other cool sound effects and all that.
So tell us more about the feature length. Let's talk about the scarf. Tell us more about the scarf. How did you find the actors for that? How did you find the music, and how did you end up writing that and coming up with that idea?
Cool, yeah. So the scarf was actually written by a guy named John Martins, and so he was the one that approached me with the script and said, "Hey, would you want to direct this film?" And so that was, my first opportunity to direct something, really direct something, a full project, pretty big. And so, uh, as far as finding the actors, we just started putting casting calls out. It was a very low budget indie feature. We put casting calls out. We're in the Vancouver area, so it's there's lots of actors here, lots of hungry actors, lots of people just looking for opportunities to act, especially in a feature length film. So finding the actors was pretty easy. It was pretty straightforward process. We got lots of individuals that were interested in auditioning for that, and then putting it together. The music. I think you had asked about the music too. The music for that film, we actually ended up. We started with hiring a composer in Los Angeles to create the score for us, and we're kind of actually working with that composer. We got a couple of tracks back, and the producer and myself were just not very. We didn't feel like it was going in the right direction, and we were kind of working with this composer to really get it to fit, and it just wasn't quite matching what either of us had envisioned for the film. And so we ended up actually, I called up a friend of mine who I knew that had, directed and produced some of his own films that he also created the score for as well. He's very musically gifted, so I asked him if he'd be willing to create the music for us. So he came out to Vancouver for a few weeks and spent a few weeks with us, and we set up a makeshift studio and rented a bunch of gear and everything we needed for that. And it was basically him for the most part creating this entire score in a matter of like 2 or 3 weeks out of my bedroom, and in our little makeshift studio that I had set up. And then I did some drums with him. I'm a drummer, so I played some drums in a couple songs, but the most of
Well,
the tracks were him, playing either off of a digital workstation or piano or electric violins. So it was quite the exciting experience for sure, and way bigger, way bigger involvement than I had envisioned I'd be part of for that piece.
am I under the impression, Kyle, that a film is completely finished, then the vocals and the voices and the acting is placed in, then the Foley? Is the music the one thing that's put in last? But you have to do it with a film that's already edited first before you do that, right?
Yeah, so typically you'll finish the editing, and you'll finish the editing with just rough placement of well, sorry, like rough editing of any vocals and dialogue and all that. You'll finish the editing. You'll have what's called a locked cut, and so the locked cut means that you're not making any changes to the timing of the film, and typically that's what then gets sent off to the sound design, the Foley department, the musicians, composer, for them to do their work. And so, in No Internet, for example, I actually was on a pretty tight deadline once we had a locked cut, and we had a certain deadline to meet. So from locked cut to the time we were able to call it completely finished was less than 4 weeks. And so at that point, we had our launch cut going off to 4 different people: our visual effects artist, our colorist, our sound designer, and our composer, who all just kind of started doing their thing on their own, sending ideas and feedback back to me for me to sign off on. But yeah, once it's pretty difficult. I think for depending on how involved the composer is or the Foley artist, you can start, they can start kind of playing with some ideas and sounds, but they really need to have that locked cut before they can record it and have it timed out perfectly.
Let's talk about Logan, starring Leo Howard.
Mm-hmm.
How did that one come out of your brain there?
Right. So yeah, that was a film that was actually written by myself and 3 other friends of mine. We were just, this was actually a multi-year process, maybe 3 or 4 years that we had spent writing the film. Before we even started trying to create it, we just wanted to write something, and we were like, let's do something together. And so we started, figuring out what is the story and creating these characters and the story. And we wanted it to definitely be something that had hopefully an impactful message. And so it does deal with teen suicide and bullying, and in a very profound way. And so that was just kind of something that we kind of saw. Hey, we want to do something. We want to write a story. We want to tell a good story, but we also want to do something profound, something meaningful, that's going to impact people. And so that's kind of where that came out of. And then once again, that film, I directed, produced that one, and ended up having the same composer from The Scarf create the music for that one as well.
Yeah, it was very enjoyable. I hear that mostly the actors, some they would live and breathe that character.
Mm-hmm.
So when they end up in front of the camera again, they are that character.
Well, yeah, I think like every actor has kind of their own thing that they do to get into character, and I think I mean that was a long time ago. So I'm trying to remember exactly if I recall Leo or Booboo sharing what methods they used, but I do know that in a lot of scenes, both of them definitely tried to really connect with the character and relate to the character. Put themselves more in that character's position. I know that for them and for a lot of actors, especially the good actors, a lot of it has to do with not just convincing your audience that it's real, but convincing yourself that it's real, and making yourself believe that this is real and that's who you are. So yeah, I know that both of them were really great to work with, and really great actors for sure. I don't want to misquote here exactly how they go about that method, because I can't remember for sure exactly how they did it, but I do know that they both really connected with the character and found ways that they could see themselves in that character's shoes.
What do you do with all the excess footage?
Right. Yeah. So I mean, yeah, the excess footage just kind of ends up on a hard drive on a shelf somewhere. And unfortunately it doesn't really get used or doesn't really ever get seen. And yeah, bloopers, from no internet, we didn't actually have tons of bloopers. We had, just, we would do retakes just to get a better performance, or to, change something in the performance, or to, change how something came across, or to change a shot or something. But, I mean, those actors were all just so spot on. It's, you definitely get bloopers, a few of them here and there. And sometimes the bloopers just don't make sense in a blooper reel, because it's kind of like a had to be there moment. Those of us that were there are like, oh, that's why it was funny, but no one else would understand why it's funny. So yeah, I mean, there's definitely a handful of bloopers. There's not tons though, and not as many as most people might think there would be. But yeah, that extra footage just kind of ends up on a shelf somewhere.
Is it true that if they do the scene 20 times, it's the 20th one that's taken because it's more real, because you're frustrated, more emotional, you've done it 19 other times?
Well, yeah, it's usually the last take that's the best one. And 20 takes is a lot. And we try not to, as directors, myself and other directors, we try not to uh, get to 20 takes with an actor, because we definitely don't want to wear out the actor. But yeah, for it depends on the actor. Sometimes some actors, the first couple takes are the best ones, they give it their all, and then after that they're tired, and or they're just, they don't let you know that, but they're really just tired, and aren't quite as great of a performance. And then other actors, you have to kind of warm up, and you do a couple wide shots or a couple takes of the wide shot and allow them to really get into it more. And then the fifth or sixth take is where they're really nailing it, and it's really getting good.
What did you do exactly on the Supergirl and the Flash, DC's Legend of Tomorrow?
Yeah, so on Supergirl, The Flash, Legends of Tomorrow, and a few other shows, I was the playback coordinator. So basically, what that is, it's a little known department that many people don't know about, but any sort of TV screen or computer monitor or even cell phone, which is on the set, which is being used by the actor or in the set, worked in as set dressing or a prop. Those all usually have images actually playing on them in real time while we're filming. Those images are created ahead of time, some sort of animation, and then programmed to be repeatable. And then the playback department is responsible for actually playing back those images on those monitors and screens. So, like Supergirl, for instance, the DEO, they have all their command center. They have all those computer monitors and everything. That was the playback department's job to put all those graphics on those TVs and monitors in that set. Same with like the Cortex and the Flash, and all the other big sets that had monitors, Catco again and Supergirl. Those were all wired back to a central station. And so my position is I was coordinating that department, which involved a lot of liaisoning between the director and the producers and the artists who were building all the files and all the graphics, and then working with our on-set operators to make sure that they had everything they needed to run the set that day, and work out any kinks and bugs. So yeah, that was a quite a hands-on job, which unlike a lot of jobs in film, in my position, I actually got to interact with a lot of different departments and interact with all the directors and the producers and the writers, and the executives in a bigger way than a lot of other crew get to. So it was definitely a really exciting and interesting experience, getting to experience, I guess, what all of these departments do and see how they work.
What about movie mistakes? Who takes care of that in like Matrix? And the worst one is Ben-Hur with Charlton Heston with the watch.
Right.
On the,
Or the Starbucks cup in Game of Thrones, or
yeah, right. Who takes care of them, making sure that that doesn't happen?
Well, yeah, it's kind of a team effort. There's a lot of people who are really watching for that, and a lot of people who are kind of on the line if that goes wrong. So you obviously the director isn't really fully well, the director isn't really the only one looking for that, because the director obviously has so many other things to juggle, but that is also at the same time still a big part of the director making sure that, hey, is this going to be good? But you have the director of photography as well, who is there on set, looking at the shot, and it's up to him or her to make sure that everything's in place and everything's looking good. You have the script supervisor, who is responsible for continuity, and so that responsibility of continuity for the script supervisor, that's not just continuity from take to take, but also maintaining continuity within the entire story, day to day in the story, and continuity within the timeline. So there's that person who's looking at the shot to make sure everything's in the right place or nothing's out of place or out of era or something. And then there's quite a few other people that are watching watching the shot, or should be watching the shot. Usually your gaffer and your key grip are watching. And so you have all these eyes on the monitor. It really is a team effort where someone catches something and points it out and says, "Oh wait, that shouldn't be there." And so you definitely have lots of sets of eyes that are watching it like before you start rolling to make sure everything looks good, and then watching it every take so that oh, we got a take or two in and we just realized we can still see something that shouldn't be there. So hopefully at some point someone catches that before we finish the day.
You think they leave these things in on purpose?
I
Just
don't
because?
know. Yeah, I think it's a mix. I think sometimes. I mean, if you look at Logan, for instance, when the film Logan that I directed, there was actually there's a scene where they're outside of their car, and the car door opens, and in a reflection for just a brief second, as the car mirror passes by, you can see our entire crew and the camera in the reflection, and it's so quick. And I never even noticed it. I edited the film myself, and all throughout editing, never even noticed it. And everyone that I showed it to while we were editing never noticed it. And then finally, after we release it, someone watched it and they're like, "I see that." I was like, "Oh no!" So, I think you just get so used to it that you don't notice these things.
That's the Alistair Sim Christmas Carol where they had like the director in the mirror when he
Right.
was looking in the mirror. Remember that part? But that was so noticeable. They actually kept it in too long. But back
Totally.
then they didn't have the equipment you can have nowadays. You
Right.
just
Right.
yeah. I really appreciated those movies.
Hmm.
If I Stay, I don't think I even recall that one. I don't think I watched that one. The Disney's Descendants and many others. But I actually want to ask you. So you're talking about cell phones and computer screens. But sometimes the cell phone would ring and the character would pick it up. That's a fake call, right?
Right. Yes. But usually that's the playback department. Putting a graphic on the cell phone, controlling it remotely with a little wireless keyboard or something, to cue it at the right time. Back before the playback department did that, it was actually dialing the phone and making a phone call. But then you got to keep you got to make sure the contact number is hidden or something. You got to make sure that you keep resetting the time to be whatever time it's supposed to be. So the playback department makes it a lot more repeatable and easier to reproduce, I guess.
Now, what about advertising? What if is there ever a time that you might catch a movie or a TV show, whatever, playing in the background, and someone from your own movie might be watching a movie on TV? Do you have to pay for those copyrights? Because
Yes, yeah. There's a lot of cost involved there. So I guess one thing, like if you go watch No Internet, you'll notice that uh, uh, the character Zach was watching a movie on his laptop and he was watching Logan, a clip from Logan. So I was just kind of reusing a piece of something I had made. But yeah, in things like Supergirl, The Flash, when they're watching a movie or something in the background, if you go back and look at it, you may notice that anytime they're watching a movie, it's usually some old black and white film from the 40s or 50s. That's because there's certain copyright laws that allow us to reuse that material which Warner Brothers already owns without having to pay anyone. So, but yeah, if you were to use something newer, then you'll notice in those shows Warner Brothers is using things they already own anyway, because that way they don't have to license the film itself. But if it's newer than a certain year, I can't remember what year it is, then even if you already own the rights, you still have to go back and negotiate something with any of the actors that appeared in that clip and pay them something for that as well. So depending on your agreements that were in place and union contracts and all that.
is that the reason why when they have on what movies or TV shows, person is drinking a Coke, they have to have the word Coke facing towards them, because that would otherwise be what, free of advertisement or something? Would that be?
Well, yeah. So yeah, they try to hide brands, and I know for some studios and some networks, like they're not concerned about getting sued or licensing the brand, but they don't want to advertise the brand if they're not going to pay for it. So it's kind of more of a, we're a big enough studio, we don't care about using your brand, but if you're not going to pay us, we're not going to show it. So it's usually safer just to you know use fake brand names, fake advertising, things like that.
So I was watching an episode of SVU, Law and Order, with Mariska Hargitay, and I was watching it, and they were talking about the movie that's currently playing on Fetnix. Is there a reason why they said Fetnix and not Netflix?
Yeah, I think again, it's just kind of one of those things where they can come up with something unique that people know what they're talking about, but it doesn't advertise or tie into an existing brand. Just especially with all of these streaming services popping up now, and every studio has their own streaming service, they definitely don't want to advertise another streaming service.
Well, congratulations on your 18 awards and 14 nominations
Thank you.
and your 30 film festivals. Wow, amazing. So, is that an Oscar that's behind you on the?
No,
No,
no Oscars yet.
that. So those are fake. What are those on behind you there on the shelf?
No, those are just various awards from the festivals
Nice.
that that I've won. So for the film.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Who has been most important person in your life?
Hmm. That is a tough question. I think there's been I think probably the most important people in my life have been friends and family that have really supported me. Especially when everything else looked like it was going to fall apart. There's these few friends and few family members that have always stuck it through. And I think those have definitely been some of the most important people in my life because of I think the process of making a film is a very tiring and tedious process, and so having that just emotional support that someone who really believes in you provides, that has been so instrumental in everything that I've done for sure. And then of course, outside of that, there's definitely been a lot of directors that I've worked with that have just been, just very influential, at least as far as getting to watch how they direct and how they do things, and seeing their styles and being able to learn from those styles for sure. I don't know if I could really pinpoint, one individual or anything, or if I did, it'd be a name that most people wouldn't know anyway. So, but yeah, I think there's definitely my kind of generic but as genuine as I can be answer is really family and friends have been extremely instrumental and important to me and to my career and to everything I've done. And then a lot of great directors that I've worked with. You look at most of the directors that I've directed these shows that I've worked on, they have all been influential in some way to me.
If you could choose one aspect of your movie making, what if and that's what you do for the rest of
Mhm.
your life, what would it be?
Definitely directing. Directing is definitely my what I'm most passionate about in filmmaking.
If you could take any song that's current right now, like Imagine Dragons or Elton John, whatever, Billy Joel, what one song would you want to incorporate as part of the movie soundtrack? And what would the movie be about then?
Wow, that is yeah, that's a really tough question. I mean, yeah, like there's a lot of great songs out there, and a lot of great songs right now. Um, and I'm just first of all, I'm just kind of blanking right now on what I would think of, but yeah, like there are so many songs that I would love to incorporate into film. I apologize, I can't pinpoint anything specific, but I think anything. I love. I guess kind of something that comes to mind is there was an episode of The Flash that starts with Uptown Funk,
Hmm.
and it kind of had this vibe that I don't know how else to describe it other than there was just this energy, this vibe that the song brought to that first part of the episode. And so I've always kind of envisioned something like that. Being able, and of course, I haven't really been able to do that because it's very expensive to license popular songs. And so I don't often have the budget available to license an expensive song. But I would love to do something like that where you incorporate something kind of like Uptown Funk or just like kind of that kind of vibe, that kind of energy, to really almost I guess open a film with that, just to set up some sort of just high energy moment for sure.
Is it more expensive to incorporate the song into the movie than it is just to have it playing in the background as somebody just doing the dishes, whatever, and they're playing music in the background?
Yeah, either way, it's expensive, because either way you're licensing it for use in the film, and if it's a well-known artist, their managers or publishers or whoever owns it will definitely negotiate 5 or 6 digits for the 60 seconds that you might use.
That's interesting. So, what is the best piece of advice you'd ever received in your career, and are you using it today?
I've received a lot of good advice. Yeah, I think one piece of advice that uh, that I've received is, I had a lady named Melinda Jason once tell me that the film industry is extremely unforgiving, and if you whatever mistake you make, the industry is going to remember it, and it's going to damage your credibility. It's going to damage your opportunities to create anything else. So that was after showing her some stuff I had done, and she was like, "Wow, this is garbage." And that was a huge piece of advice that I received, for me to be able to be like, okay, so I need to make sure that what I'm doing, uh, like I need to know what I want, and I need to get what I want on set, and never say, "Oh, that's fine, we'll fix it later," or, "Oh, that's fine, we'll make it work." And so that has definitely been a really big, turning point, I guess, for me, and a really big piece of advice that I received was just hearing someone who has a lot of connections tell me my work sucks, and the industry is very unforgiving. And so that definitely was a very instrumental piece of advice that I definitely am using and keeping in mind with the projects that I do. I know there was a film that I did a few years ago that it was the first time where I actually was able to get to the end of the film and say there was never one moment on set that I said, "Oh, that's fine. We'll just do it that way," and sacrifice what I wanted. If it was going to take more time, it took more time. If we had to do something else to make it happen, we did something else to make it happen. But I just said, like, this is what I want, and this is what we're going to shoot, and this is like we're going to make it happen. No matter what is going wrong, we're going to find a way to make it happen. I'm not going to give in, not going to sacrifice the quality. And that film was the first time that I actually completed a film and watched it and said, I am very happy with this film. There isn't a single thing I would change. And so from that point forward, I have made it very intentional about, I guess, not giving in on set when things are falling apart. Don't be okay with something less. Push for something great.
Do you envision the scene in your head before you start shooting it?
Definitely, yeah. I'm definitely envisioning the scene in my head. I spend a lot of time before I even get on set. Blocking out the scene in my mind, making notes, figuring out kind of where things will go. Of course, that may change on the day, which is totally fine. I've had scenes where the actors, I didn't give them any notes or indication at the beginning, and we just did a little rehearsal, and whatever they did, whatever came naturally, just ended up being so much better. But I at least came to set with a plan, and come to set with a plan for every scene, and definitely know kind of exactly where I want this scene to go and how I want it to play out.
So Hunter Dillon did so many scenes to get those scenes correct. So you chose the scene that you were going to use, but what if he didn't like that? You know how I said that you do the scene like 20 times and it's the 20th one? What if he did that one scene 8 times and he wanted number 5 because he thought he did really well on it, but you said that number 8 was the best? So how do you reconcile the two?
Well, yeah, so I think there's definitely a very big level of trust between the actor and the director, and the director. I guess the director is there to make sure that the actor is going to look good, and so there is this. Obviously, the director is doing a whole lot more than just that, but there's this level of trust that you as a director you really have to let the actor know that you have their back and that you want them to have the best performance possible in every scene, in every shot. And so it takes this level of trust where I guess Hunter, for example, he would trust me to say, okay, that's a good take, or if there's a problem, he would trust me to bring that problem to him and let him know, hey, here's something to adjust, or try this or do this differently. And so there's this trust established where there were, if I think back to No Internet and working with Hunter Dillon, there were there was one scene actually where I thought we had it. We had what I wanted. We had what we needed, and we were about to break for lunch, and we would have moved on to the next scene after lunch. But Hunter came to me and like after that take and just said, I really didn't like my performance so far, and I think I can do better, and I have an idea on how I can do better. And so again, that's where the trust comes, this two-way street. And so I trusted him to say, well, it's going to put us behind schedule. I mean, I didn't say that to him at the time, but in my mind, it's like, well, it's going to put us behind schedule if we go again because we're ready to move on to the next scene. But we'll break for lunch, and then we'll come back to this scene, and we'll do it again using your idea. And so I think that allowed him to make sure that he knew that I did trust him as well. And if there was something that he felt was off about his performance, that I want to make sure that he's going to get the opportunity to give a better performance. And at the same time, it builds that trust so that he knows that I'm watching out for him as well. And that one of my priorities is making sure that he has the best performance too. So then once we get to the editing room, that same level of trust applies to, the actors just trusting that myself or the editor, if there's someone other than the director editing the film, that we have a good reason for why we chose the take that we chose, for whatever reason it was the best performance or the best shot or the best overall storytelling. There's just this huge amount of trust for sure, and of course, to that end, the actors really don't see all the other takes anyway. So I don't think they would, they might notice a take as, oh man, that was the worst one, why do you use that one? So hopefully that doesn't happen, but sometimes it does. I don't think they really remember, oh, take 2 was great, take 4 sucked, or take 5 was really good, because they're just in the moment, they're not really keeping track of the takes or anything, they're just performing, right?
So they may request a copy of that movie to show in case you do a resume.
Right. Yeah. Typically, I just give them a copy of the film, or just the pieces that they were in, and that way, they get the fully edited, because they probably don't want to use the unused pieces anyway, because it doesn't have color timing and color correction, it doesn't have music, it doesn't have foley or anything, and it just looks underdone. And they definitely want to have the best looking material in their reels as well. I typically just send them what came from the final cut.
Do you have an associate director? Assistant director, sorry.
Yeah, so all of my films, I usually have a first and second and third assistant director, and they have pretty defined roles that they carry out on set. But I definitely do have a couple of people that I go to as my trusted first ADs that I've really enjoyed working with.
But you have the final say, right?
Yeah, definitely. The assistant directors don't really have any creative input. They're more just managing the set to allow the director to focus on the creative side.
Was there a film that you did? They need a specific object for the movie in order for it to work, and they go far and wide just to find this object. Are you that type of person?
You're just talking about, like, how do you find what this unique object is that we're...
Yeah, unique object. So let's say you had to find like a Fabergé angle, you had to find a copy of Mona Lisa, or like they don't allow you to film in the Louvre, but whatever scene you're doing in a movie has to be in the Louvre. How would you create that scene?
Well, yeah, so there's a lot that goes into production design, and yeah, there's a lot of things in film that are fake, and as long as it looks real on camera, you'll sell the audience and let them know it's real. And yeah, like if you're looking for something that's very rare or very hard to find, very unique, or inaccessible, there are ways to create a fake, create a duplicate, build a set. I mean, these like the sets that these TV shows build are just so amazing how realistic they are. When you're inside of this big concrete building, but then you have these little banana board plywood walls built around you, and on the outside of the set, it's clear that you're just in some studio. But you walk into the set and they have all the lights turned on and they have these huge 18Ks shining in the windows for sunlight. It actually feels like you're in this building, and there are times where I myself would walk through these sets and forget that I was in a studio until I walk out the set and just see concrete walls, and because it's that realistic. And so yeah, and at the same time though, they're using materials that you wouldn't actually use. You might see something that should be metal. It's really just a thin piece of wood that's been finely polished and painted and with a nice sealant on it, and it looks like metal. There's a lot of fake that goes on in film, and as long as it looks real to the audience, that's really all that matters at the end of the day.
What would you want your last film to be called?
Like last film in my life?
Yeah.
I don't know. I haven't thought about that. I don't know. I don't have an answer for that. Hopefully every film that I direct would not just have a great story, but also inspire people in some way. I know that doesn't necessarily say anything about the title, but hopefully it's something good. hopefully it's something people want to watch.
Do you think there are enough opportunities for people with limited experience in the industry?
Oh yeah, there are lots of opportunities, especially in a big city where there's a lot of film activity, such as Vancouver or Los Angeles or Atlanta. Anywhere where there's a big film scene, there are lots of opportunities for inexperienced individuals to get in as a day call production assistant or a day call grip or just something bottom of the totem pole, and just start getting your feet wet. It's really about just meeting people, or finding the right connections. There's Facebook groups that where people will be posting for oh, we need 5 more production assistants, and every production assistant in the city is booked on the other 60 shows that are filming. So there's lots of opportunity for sure.
Believe you have been in a few of your movies. So would you prefer to be in front of the camera or behind it?
Definitely behind the camera. I am not an actor at all.
If you could be in any actor, who would it be?
So if you
could be any actor right now, you wake up and you're that actor, who would it be?
That's a good question. I think I would want to be Tom Holland.
Oh,
if I could wake up and be an actor, I would be Tom Holland, because
Spider-Man.
He has a cool job and he seems like a really cool guy. I've never met him, but he seems super friendly, and of course very good looking. So I wouldn't mind looking like that.
So what was the last movie you saw, and did it inspire you to write your next project?
Last movie I saw was, I don't remember the name of it, but it didn't really inspire me, so maybe that's why I don't remember. So maybe I won't say the name of it. But I guess the last film that really inspired me, not too long ago, I saw a movie called Wonder.
Yes, I love that one.
And that one, I cried about 15 times during the film. Very moving film, and that one definitely inspired me. I've always wanted to make films that have good stories and inspire people, but at the end of that one, I was just, inspired to say, I want everything I do to be this moving and this inspirational. I want to be the one that directs films that make people cry 15 times while they're watching it. So that was definitely a very inspiring movie for me.
How would you know that worked?
I think just I guess for me, if I'm watching it, and even though I've read the script a bazillion times and watched every take a bazillion times, if I'm watching the final cut and I'm finding that I'm moved by it, then I think there's a pretty good chance that it will work. Because I'm not an outside party. I'm so connected to it, and so like I'm so I guess desensitized to the story, and then of course when I share that film with others, when people walk out of the theater saying I was crying the whole time, or whatever, then I know I succeeded. That's kind of like, especially with the movie Logan. I oftentimes have people that just watched it for the first time, and they tell me they just watched it, and they say it made them cry, and I just say, "Good, that was my goal. I'm glad you cried." So yeah.
Hmm.
But Wonder was much more recently, and just kind of I guess re-inspired me to say, "Wow, I really want to make that. I want to make something that moving, right?"
So what are the most important skills for a director?
I think for a director, problem solving is probably the most important skill, because really, and I've heard a couple directors say this, but uh, your job as a director is you're really just the paid problem solver, and so being able to, I guess, foresee everything that could possibly go wrong and make a plan B and a plan C and a plan Y, X, Y, Z. Having every plan possible, and everything thought through, so that problem solving, the planning, the foresight, I think those are extremely valuable skills for any director. If you know how to problem solve, then you'll do pretty well as a director. And then and then of course on top of that, being able to tell a good story. I think storytelling is a pretty essential skill as well. But not just being able to tell a good story, but knowing how to translate that story into your acting and your shots and your camera moves and your lighting and your music and everything else.
Can you tell me what you think is the most important elements of a good film?
Definitely story. Story is by far probably the most important element of a good film. If you have a great story, you can usually overlook poor production value or somewhat mediocre acting, or like bad sound. But if you have you know everything else is great, but like no story, uh, it's just very boring and it doesn't grab people, and you want to leave right away. So I think story is probably the most important aspect of a good film. But then obviously on top of that, I think production value, uh, and how I think production value is a pretty important factor. Great acting is important, because bad acting can definitely still take you out of the story. Um, you know, Good directing, obviously, good music. There's lots of factors, but I think story is number one for sure.
So what is your favorite genre of film? What are you leaning towards? All of them?
Uh, I mean, mostly all of them. I like drama for sure. I mean, just because drama is usually where you're going to find something more moving, more inspirational. And I definitely love sci-fi adventure, and I definitely love comedy. So yeah, those drama, sci-fi, adventure, comedy. Those are kind of my top four, I guess.
Do you have any hobbies outside of filming, or is filming your life?
No, I have some hobbies. I do I snowboard. I play drums.
Nice.
And I do enjoy hiking a lot. So there's definitely a world outside of film for me, but also pretty heavily involved in film too.
Tell me about your first short film.
There was kind of I guess a rebirth, I guess, in my career, where then I did a couple short films, and really kind of after having some experience on set for these big studio productions, then I gained a lot of knowledge about how things work, and then was like, okay, now I'm going to go make a real short film. and make something, of this caliber on my tiny little budget. So yeah, I guess first short film is a debatable. I don't know what you'd call my first film, but yeah, there's depends on how you look at it.
How do you develop a story?
Right. So, well, yeah. So there's actually a really great book called Save the Cat by Blake Snyder, I think, and really good book on the whole idea of how to create the story. And there's kind of a recipe that he gives for getting your beginning, your middle, your end, plotting it out. So like a lot of it, like for me in my experience with it is, I try to just kind of first develop the overall what is the story. If I were to summarize it in, one or two sentences, what is the story? What's happening? What's the goal? And then I like to go from there and actually create characters and develop all the characters and kind of have a nice backstory for the characters before I even start writing what's happening. Because when I have a better understanding of the characters and know what their backstories are and what their personalities are, then it helps me to have it makes it the process of creating the scenes and what's happening and writing the dialogue a whole lot easier because you kind of get to know who these characters are first and know what would be realistic for them to say and do. And then at that point, I go through and kind of, plot out here are the story moments, the key pieces that happen, and then here's how we get here to there. And then I go back and write the dialogue.
Yep. I find your creative process and your storylines, especially for no internet, that was an amazing idea. I don't know, like that's incredibly. And to tell you the truth, the ending is powerful. I can't wait for your next film.
Cool, thank you.
So, do you get a lot of feedback from your actors?
Like on set or after the fact?
Like, I don't like this scene, Kyle. Can we do it this way? Like they go all Lucille Ball on you.
All of the actors that I've worked with have been, really collaborative. It's definitely a collaborative process. It's not, my way or the highway with either side. But yeah, I've definitely had, instances where actors will say, "Hey, can we try it this way? Can we try it that way?" And again, that's where that trust comes in. Is they trust me enough to know that they can approach me with an idea, and I'm not going to shoot them down. But yeah, I've definitely had actors that say, "Hey, I don't like how this is working. Can we try this? Can I say this differently?" And sometimes I might have a reason for saying no, and whether or not they like it, they just have to trust that there's a reason for it. But a lot of times, I actually say, "Hey, that's a really great idea," and we try it, and sometimes I just kind of give them the opportunity to let them say, "Okay, how about we try it my way one more take, and then we'll do your way one or two takes," and just give them that opportunity to try it. And if it works, it works, and if it doesn't work, then there's no loss aside from a few minutes of time. So yeah, definitely.
But then they say, well, what if you secretly say, well, I really don't like it. I'll switch it back. And then they look, that's not my scene. Kyle, you changed it.
Right. Totally. I think, in the end, actors, I mean, all the actors that I've worked with have just been such amazing people. And so, they obviously know that there's a lot of thought that goes into why everything gets chosen. And so, I think in the end, they trust that hopefully they trust that the director has their back and is watching out for them.
What is your favorite scene in a film?
In any film or?
Well, okay, in any film. Choose a film, then what's your favorite scene from it?
That's tough too. Sorry, I'm not good at all these favorite questions. Favorite scene from any film?
For me, it's a Forrest Gump scene where he's sitting on the bench. That's my favorite scene.
Yeah, I think I'm sure it's probably something from Ocean's 11 or Mean Girls. So I don't know if I can pinpoint a favorite scene, but definitely if I thought about it and went back and was like, hey, what's my favorite scene? It'd probably come from one of those two movies.
What if suddenly an actor that you really wanted in your film can't be there on location, but they will be in your film, but they have to be doing all their lines from Israel, for instance? How would you
Mhm.
do that so it makes it look like they're in the same room with you in the end of the film?
Well, I think if it was that extreme of an example, we'd probably have to recast. But there's yeah, there's ways that could be done for sure. And I think it depends on the circumstances, depends on the budget. Obviously, that's you know if an actor is stuck somewhere on the other side of the world, and we can't have them with us on set, there are definitely ways to achieve that. Using doubles with your other actors in the wide shots, and then going and filming their close-ups, and building the same set and matching the set and making it look the same. It can be done. There's ways to achieve it, and there's definitely lots of you know situations where I kind of had to work things out to make things work for certain actors. But I think sometimes too, in a situation like that, you might just have to recast sometimes too. I know you may not want to. It's a uh, hard call to make, but sometimes, or if you can just reschedule things and wait until the actor's available, that can be done too.
So, what is your favorite place to shoot? Like this, for instance, No Internet was in the bedroom. You had computers with them playing games. How do you want your scene to look? More futuristic?
Mhm. Well, yeah. So I mean, yeah. All like I mean, no internet was interesting because we filmed in June 2020, and so everything was closed, and we were trying to make do with what was available to us. So there was a scene outside of the front of a no internet, or sorry, of an internet cafe, that was originally supposed to take place in a library, but we just couldn't secure a library because no libraries would allow us to film because of the whole COVID situation. Um,
Oh,
so so definitely, I think favorite place to film would be any sort of. I think definitely an indoor location because it's a lot easier to control for lighting, and you don't have to worry about weather. But definitely any sort of larger uh, or older building, for sure. Something that really has a lot of character. So like I kind of envision, in No Internet, we were supposed to have a big library set. And I like something big because it gives you lots of scope behind you, lots of depth to your scene, lots of cool things to look at. But especially like any old buildings that have a lot of character to them, an old church or an old, government building, or just something that has, you know, you can tell this has been around for a long time. There's lots of texture on the walls, lots of space, lots of depth. That would definitely be my favorite type of location to film in.
so you actually scope out your locations then, like a lot of them do.
Definitely, yeah.
What are you most proud of about your film? Let's say No Internet.
No internet. I think the fact that we did it, because it was we were supposed to shoot it in March of 2020. Everything, the whole world came to a halt a week before we were supposed to start filming. The entire film industry in Vancouver shut down. And so in June of 2020, the entire film industry in Vancouver was still shut down. And but we moved forward, and the actors union was not open yet. They wouldn't allow us to film any of the scenes that required the union actors. But we shot for 3 days in June of 2020 with all of our non-union actors. We had the blessing from the Directors Guild. I called the business agent of the Directors Guild and I said, "What do we do?" And he said, "Hey, you have so many crew available to you right now. You have so many equipment available to you. Go for it. Do it." We had all these crew from Supergirl and from Riverdale that were sitting at home, bored out of their minds, had nothing to do. and they were happy to be on set and volunteer their time. And so we had so many experienced crew. We had so much free gear that we had access to. And then we went back in mid-July and filmed for 3 more days with our union actors once things got reopened a bit more. But yeah, I think just the fact that we accomplished it, and the fact that we had, I guess, all of this, I guess, blessing in disguise, all this stuff available to us that otherwise wouldn't have been available to us, was definitely something that I would say I'm very thankful for sure.
Are you familiar with Ryan Connolly's YouTube channel, Film Riot?
I am, yes.
Do you usually use a lot of those ideas that he's for your films? Does he inspire you?
Well, I haven't watched his stuff in a while, so I don't know for sure if anything of his inspired me as far as what I'm doing in my films. But I can say that Film Riot inspired me to make filmmaking for noobs, which is very similar, very I would say quite a bit different style and different audience than Film Riot, but just kind of the similar idea of, hey, I just want to teach people how to make films, how to do filmmaking. So I definitely remember watching Film Riot for the first time on an airplane back in like 2009 or something, and that really inspired me to do something to similar to that. And so then a couple years later, I started developing the idea for Filmmaking for Noobs, and then a few years after that, actually started making the series. So yeah, I think that Film Riot and what Ryan Connolly's doing over there is super cool for sure.
Do you have any advice for aspiring filmmakers?
Advice for aspiring filmmakers would be just get out there and start making as much as you can, making as many films as you can. I mean, so it doesn't matter if you have zero budget. Find whatever DSLR or camcorder or whatever cheap little camera you have access to, or even your phone. An iPhone 13 looks really great. So get whatever camera you have access to and get out there and just make films and tell stories. Use your friends as actors. The more you do, it doesn't matter how low budget it is, it's going to make you a better director. It's going to give you the experience, and it's going to allow you the opportunity to make more mistakes and learn from those mistakes and learn how to do it better when there's actually money on the line and when there's actually someone's investment on the line. You don't want to be making those mistakes and learning, when someone else has invested in your project, in a hoping for a return. So get out there and just keep telling stories, making films. Use whoever is willing to act. Doesn't matter if it's low quality or if it sucks. Your first few you may not show to many people, but it helps you to learn, and then you'll definitely get better, and will hopefully usually get better as you learn from that process.
What movie are you currently working on now?
I am actually attached to a feature film called My Heart Remembers. It's based on a novel of the same name, and so the producers are currently doing the whole fundraising, financing aspect of that, trying to raise the money for it and get the budget in place. But I'm attached to direct this film, and we're we have the rights in place from the author and the publisher and all that, and they're super excited about it. So it's a period drama set in the early 1900s, and definitely a very cool, moving story for sure. So I'm very excited about that film.
What do you think of James Cameron's work?
Good. I mean, it's he definitely knows how to tell a story, and yeah, like I've enjoyed some of his films that I've seen. So
Like Titanic and
yeah, definitely.
Terminator. And the music on there is pretty interesting because some of them would use, like John Williams, for instance, for Star Wars, have a real life orchestra watching the movie, and they're playing it as that's kind of interesting. What about Quentin Tarantino and his Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is based on based on the Charles Manson murders, but he made it so, I don't know if you ever watched that movie, but he made it so it never happens.
Hmm.
Like, it's just extraordinary.
Right. Yeah. I haven't seen tons of Quentin Tarantino's work, but I mean, he's definitely, like just because a lot of the movies he does are not quite just the genre I'm interested in. But yeah, I do know, like, from his work that I have seen, I know he's definitely a great director. And I love seeing interviews with him. I just love seeing just the passion that he has, the drive that he has, and just hearing just kind of just kind of, he doesn't really care what you think. He just he's going to tell a story and he's going to make it happen and do what he wants. Which I love that about him for sure.
Well, thank you very much, Kyle, for this interview, for joining us on the stage. Really appreciate it. Thank you for spending this much time with us. We've learned now about directing, producing, and everything about what your job is, and really appreciate that. And for people who just hit the subscribe button for more content, go to Kyle Lawrence's YouTube channel and watch the movie No Internet. It's actually excellent. And the movie Logan. Okay, thank you, Kyle. Really appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, everyone, and goodbye. See ya.
Cool, thank you.
Today that the town of Willfield will be suspending all cellular data and internet services for 1 year.
There's no way the rest of the town agreed to this.
I want the internet back just as much as you do.
We're gonna figure out how to get it turned back on.